I would like to start out by thanking Father Wayne for allowing me to come back to Hershey and to preach here this weekend. It's great to be back in this wonderful parish. Today, all of our readings revolve around the virtue of faith and how we must place our trust in God. Faith is not just a theological virtue, however. There is a story of a traveler in the early days of the West that when he came to the Mississippi River, he discovered that there was no bridge. Fortunately, it was winter, and the great river was sheeted over with ice. Another man was walking parallel to the river and said it was safe to cross. But the first traveler was afraid to trust himself or the other man, not knowing how thick the ice was. Finally, with infinite caution, he crept on his hands and knees and managed to get halfway over. Then all of a sudden, he heard a loud singing coming from behind him. Cautiously, he turned, and there, out of the dusk, came another traveler driving a 4-horse load of coal over the ice, singing as he went. Sometimes we must have faith that what others tell us is true. I remember when I was 9 years old, a priest started off his homily by saying that faith was a difficult word to define, and he wasn't quite sure how to explain it to everybody in the parish. Being the good student I was, I thought to myself, why didn't he just look up the word in the dictionary before Mass? Well, now that I have a little more wisdom and experience preaching, I know that faith is something that we might be able to define, but we can't easily understand it or live it out. If I have to give a one-word definition for faith, it would be belief. And if I have to give a one-word definition for belief, it would be acceptance. In a few minutes, when we say the Nicene Creed, we say, I believe in one God. And that means we are all saying that what we accept in the Creed is true. Most matters of religion are sometimes difficult to accept. We live in a world where we have to prove everything beyond a shadow of a doubt. And many elements of our faith cannot be demonstrated in ways we are accustomed to. Our second reading today illustrates this point for us. St. Paul gives us the phrase that we have likely heard many times, we walk by faith and not by sight. In fact, that's also the title of the offertory song we will be singing in a few minutes. We do not know God's plan. When things seem to be going against us, it is easy to lose faith and to just give up. Yet St. Paul tells us that our true home is in heaven. We can get comfortable in this life, yet everything good or bad will pass away in the end. This actually reminds me of a recent episode of The Simpsons. In this episode, the family goes on a cruise. The family is having their time of their life, but Bart, the son, realizes the trip must end. He's having so much fun, however, he tries to think of a way to extend the cruise. So, he convinces everyone else on the ship that there is a global pandemic going on and they have to stay at sea. The fun soon ends, however, for everyone when the ship runs out of food and water. After the ship realizes there is no plague, of course Bart gets into trouble. The family tells Bart that you have to enjoy the high points in life, as well as the low points. We must all enjoy the high points in our life when they come around. But St. Paul makes an adjustment to the lesson that Bart learned by saying that our true happiness does not come until we are in heaven. We do not know what heaven is going to be like, but we only know what this world, what we can experience is. But St. Paul assures us that the next life is much better than this one. We cannot live our lives with the sole point being to get just to the next day. We must have faith that if we follow Christ in this life, we will be rewarded in the next. Our gospel parable tells us about plants in a field. We now have a better understanding about how plants grow than the disciples who would have heard Jesus' parable did 2,000 years ago. But there is still much in this world that we do not understand. We must accept that God knows more than us. The reward for those who do is eternal happiness in heaven. Some might want to think of it as a cruise that never runs out of food and never ends. For some people, faith is easier than others. This is because faith is also a gift from God. God must make himself known to us before we can accept him. All people are called by God to believe, but some ignore the gift that God is giving them. This is called dead faith. It is the kind of faith which would lead a man to take a bottle of medicine from his medicine cabinet. Looking at the instructions on it, he says, "I am sure they're correct. I have all the confidence in the world in the doctor who gave me this medicine. I know who wrote these directions. I believe everything about this drug. I know it will relieve my headache if I take it." But instead of taking the medicine, the man just puts it back on the shelf. He doesn't lose his headache. It continues on. Yet he can still say he believes in the medicine. He knows all about the medicine, but he just won't take it. That is dead faith. Just like when we trust the instructions the doctor has given us with our medicine, so we must believe the teachings that the apostles give us, so that we might have our home one day in heaven as well. Let us all pray for a greater faith for ourselves and for our neighbors, especially those who have no faith whatsoever, whose faith is dead. That way, we will all be on our eternal cruise together one day in paradise. Thank you.